The courtroom wasn't just quiet, it was practically auditioning for a role in a thriller. Not your run-of-the-mill post-gavel silence, no. This was the dramatic, suffocating kind of stillness that hangs in the air like a spoiler just before the climax. And then, cue the twist. Breaking through the tension like a bad plot turn came a sound nobody had on their courtroom bingo card. Sean Diddy Combs, the mogul of moguls, head bowed, hands to his face, openly sobbing. Yes, sobbing. Not exactly the unshakable Titan image we're used to, right? Suddenly this wasn't some dry, by-the-book federal hearing anymore. It had morphed into something far stranger. The scene stealer? A piece of jailhouse audio? A clip so short, so bizarre, it almost begged to be mocked. Get rid of the pizza boxes and recycle the plastic. What? Was this courtroom drama or a PSA for environmentally responsible inmates? People initially traded looks like, is this for real? But then the collective mood took a nosedive because it clicked. These weren't housekeeping tips, they were codes. And once that realization rippled through the room, the temperature seemed to drop about 10 degrees. Confused glances gave way to shivers. Whispers swelled, suspicions flared. And just like that, the whole courtroom knew they weren't watching the end of a routine day. They were watching the start of something way, way messier. What was he really saying? What was being swept under the nearest luxury rug? And more importantly, who else had their fingerprints all over this circus? That single bizarre audio clip didn't just raise eyebrows, it kicked open a door no one had the stomach to peek behind. And once prosecutors caught the scent, they came out swinging like they'd been waiting their whole careers for this moment. The charges? Oh, not your garden variety slap-on-the-wrist stuff. We're talking the full horror show. Racketeering, sex trafficking, unlawful transport across state lines. Words so heavy they made the air itself feel denser. Words soaked in decades of scandal, corruption, and trauma. The kind of accusations that don't just target a man, they target the empire he built, the handlers, the enablers, the silent beneficiaries. Because let's be clear, this wasn't about just one celebrity caught in the headlights. This was about the whole gleaming, soulless machine, greased with money, masked with fame, and fueled by silence. And just when people thought they'd hit rock bottom, prosecutors took out a jackhammer. They claimed Diddy hadn't simply been marking time in a cell. Oh no, he'd been playing chess in solitary. Allegedly, he was using other inmates' phones like burner lines for back-channel ops, sending messages, arranging payouts, pulling strings. The man wasn't just caged, he was conducting an underground symphony. A king in chains, still barking orders from a crumbling throne. Then came the names. Those names. The kind that make headlines explode and PR teams break into cold sweats. Jay-Z, Mayor Eric Adams, power players whose resumes read like American royalty. And if any of them are tangled up in this web, well, let's just say a few legacies might be heading straight for the shredder. There was a gasp, not some dramatic, made-for-TV moment, just sharp enough to slice through the tension and etch the moment into everyone's brain. Was this really happening? A woman took the stand, her identity concealed like some noir mystery figure, voice quivering like it wanted to disappear. She didn't spin tales, she dropped fragments. She spoke of nights spent prepping hotel rooms for what Diddy allegedly dubbed Wild King nights. Sounded glamorous, right? Except, according to her, these weren't parties. They were rituals soaked in something far darker than champagne. She spoke in splinters, baby oil, silence, pain. Words that didn't need full sentences to be understood. The courtroom didn't so much as twitch, frozen in the kind of stillness that only comes when people are hearing something they can't quite unhear. And then, like a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet, came the question that clanged through the room and refused to leave. Is this why he's evaded justice for so long? It didn't just hover, it dug in, heavy and undeniable. Even the judge, typically carved from marble, visibly shifted in his seat, like the gravity in the room had changed. Diddy's legal team, predictably, came out swinging like they'd just found out the cameras were rolling. They called the charges bloated, politically motivated, and racially loaded. They practically spat out the words "Mann Act," reminding everyone of its ugly, racist lineage, suggesting this was less about justice and more about tearing down a successful black man with too much power for the system's liking. But prosecutors weren't flinching. Not even close. They painted a picture all right, only it wasn't just damning, it was downright haunting. A man who wielded charm like a blade and fear like a leash. Not a mogul, not a victim, a predator in designer armor. They said he didn't just build an empire, he built an illusion. A glittering, fevered dream of lights, cameras, and whispered promises designed to dazzle the unsuspecting long enough to lock the doors behind them. It was glamour as camouflage. One witness, a woman with the kind of haunted calm that can't be faked, said it without frills. He made me feel special, until I realized I was a pawn. And then, as if someone had broken a sacred silence, came the term no one could scrub from their minds: freakoffs. Not wild parties, not indulgent nights. These were meticulously arranged ceremonies of control, manipulation, and quiet terror, wrapped in velvet and served with champagne. People testified to the same story in different voices, lured in by luxury, locked in by fear. Meanwhile, behind the velvet curtain, investigators were pulling threads, and what they found looked less like disorganization and more like a masterclass in laundering power. Offshore accounts, aliases that sounded like rejected Bond villains, vaults hidden behind fake walls, private jets and penthouses bought through layers of shell companies like Russian dolls of deception. This wasn't just criminal, it was surgical. And then came the whisper that twisted the knife. A vault in the Hamptons. But not just a safe, no. This was a bunker, a private fortress allegedly stuffed with secrets that could bring down gods. Tapes, documents, evidence not meant for any courtroom but capable of flattening careers, cracking marriages, and detonating entire political bloodlines. And just like that, the specter of blackmail strutted into the story. One woman said she was threatened with the release of tapes. Those nights, those faces, not your everyday scandal. The kind of footage that doesn't just ruin lives, it leaves empires in ashes. More people came forward, some shielded by anonymity, others stepping into the light like they'd finally had enough of the shadows. And they weren't just pointing fingers at Diddy. They were sketching out an entire ecosystem. A culture, a hierarchy, a machine greased by money and protected by silence, all of it built to keep the powerful untouchable and the victims invisible. Former employees talked about NDAs wielded like blunt force weapons, about abuse that didn't just get ignored, but was practically steam cleaned off Persian rugs in seven-figure homes. They described contracts not as protection, but as muzzles. Polished legal traps designed to keep mouths shut and reputations pristine. And still, the question hung in the air like a bad smell. Why now? Some murmured about rival moguls smelling blood in the water. Others hinted at a looming tell-all project, a scorched earth expose threatening to tear down the gilded curtain Hollywood and the music industry have been hiding behind for decades. Maybe, just maybe, the authorities jumped in before the whole dam gave way. Each court session now feels like peeling back another layer of perfectly packaged rot. And with every fresh detail, the sense of unease only deepens. This isn't just about holding one man accountable, it's about excavating a system that thrived in the dark. Then came the moment that almost felt too symbolic. Diddy looking up through glassy, tear-filled eyes. But it wasn't guilt glimmering behind them. No, it looked an awful lot like fear. Like the house of cards he'd built was finally catching fire, and he could hear it collapsing floor by floor. What do you think of this drama? Let us know in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe Celebrity Insider News and press the bell icon for more celebrity gossips. Thanks for watching.